All right, so we're going to be talking about metta tonight. You've probably heard a lot about metta. You could probably teach metta yourself, quite a few of you, but maybe we'll get at it from a different angle and we'll talk, turn it into something of a discussion. Metta refers to loving friendliness, loving kindness. You might say agape love, brotherly, sisterly love, universal loving kindness, all the same. Metta is that quality of well-wishing that is not distinguishing among people. I like these, I don't like those because they're not nice to those. I like these, I don't like those. I prefer these to those. None of that. Metta is an open heart, a heart without obstacles, a heart without walls and barriers. The Buddha gave us some instructions on cultivating metta in the simile of the saw. And would our fastest sutta hunter get us up the sutta of the simile of the saw, Venerable Bodhi translation. And if anybody has not yet come across Sutta Central, that link to suttaCentral.net/mn21/en/Sujato, Sujato, the recording. That takes you right into this sutta. If you're not familiar with Sutta Central, please familiarize yourself with that resource. You can access almost all of the Pali Canon at this point on Sutta Central, all free, all freely available. So, there's a related discussion channel for discussing the suttas and related topics called Discuss and Discover. So you may find these resources very beneficial in your practice. Okay, so getting down to the nitty gritty of this sutta. What? It's Buddy G's kind of language, I guess.
I'm sorry, I'm prone to giggling.
She had a good meditation, I think. Some people laugh when they're laughing at. Some people laugh because they're just in a pleasant state.
Happy.
Happy. Can you imagine? Happy. Most of the people who signed up for today's meditation on the meetup, I double checked why they signed up for meetups. Almost every one of them said they want peace of mind. Well, what are the interruptions to peace of mind? Now, let me just clarify something here. The mind in its essential state, if there's such a thing, in its essence, shall we say, is bright, radiant, unafflicted. Like the sun at noon is shining, unless there's an obstruction, your mind would be known to be radiant to you. So if the sun is not shining, then at noon, then there may be a sandstorm, a snowstorm, fog, smoke. There's a reason for it. If your mind is miserable, your heart is clouded, there's a reason for it. Because if there was not some defilement, some problem, some issue blocking it, then you would be right there, easily at hand, you would find that radiance. The Buddha said, this mind, O monks, is luminous, meaning glowing from within. It's luminous, but it is covered by adventitious defilements. So I looked up adventitious, and that means like they jump in when they have an opportunity. They take advantage. What advantage? No mindfulness or a lapse of mindfulness. Or some other unwholesome state comes up and boom, the mindfulness wobbles or is lapsing, then any unwholesome state might jump in, and your mind is not luminous. It is covered. It may be chronically, habitually covered, but that luminosity is there. It never went anywhere. You can always tap into it. When people tap into it, sometimes they think they have a great religious experience and go found a religion. Don't do that. Save us from another religion. And luminosity of mind, full connection with luminosity of mind, is not enlightenment. Enlightenment is a different thing. We're talking about worldly wisdom here, ordinary wisdom, just of clearing the table, clearing the work table to where you can, if your workshop table was covered in all kinds of debris and sawdust and rags and stuff. You couldn't work on the workbench. You couldn't do anything. You had to clear it, right? So how do we clear our minds? Well, mindfulness of the body is just brilliant for clearing the mind. Mindfulness of the breathing, a subset of mindfulness of the body, seems to be particularly effective for a lot of people. But sometimes just staying mindful of the whole body is all you need to just not be caught up in a lot of trouble. Well, today I want to talk about metta. And I want to talk about metta as a remedy. So again, that is loving kindness, universal loving kindness. What happens is that you're minding your own business, and then somebody says something to you. Adriana is nodding. Everything was just fine, and then someone says something to you. The Buddha warned us that there are 5 courses of speech that can hit your ears. It could be true or untrue, timely or untimely, true or untrue, gentle or harsh, with good intentions or harmful intentions. It could be spoken with a mind of loving kindness or inner hate. So people say things to you. Actually, they cause sound waves to go bouncing, and you interpret them in certain ways, and then you get a message, and then you might be suddenly finding your luminosity of mind far away because of the message you perceived out of the sound waves that came from the mouth of that person, presumably reflecting the mental state that they had. And you might be perceiving what they said as untimely, as untrue, as unkind, as just wrong, spoken with cruelty. And how could they do that to me?
With a mind of hate.
Ooh, hate. So the Buddha gave us some advice about maintaining balance. You have the whole sutta there in front of you. And if you've been around these kinds of teachings for a while, you've probably heard this sutta a few different times. Who has heard this sutta at least twice before? Hands up. You see? So there's a good representation in the crowd here of people who've heard it more than once. So I'm not going to go, page, beginning page to end of the page of this discourse. You have the link there. You can explore it yourself. But there are a number of good points in this sutta, but I really want to zero in on where the Buddha says that these different kinds of speech might reach your ears. And when it's on the hard side of it, that it might be untimely and harsh and all that, he gives this advice. Here in bhikkhus, it's the monks, but he just says bhikkhus because he's talking to monks and lots of times female monks and laymen, lay women. So just because he says bhikkhus doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you. It could also apply to you. Here in bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. So maybe someone could put into the chat a link directly to this section. Mendicants, which is a translation of bhikkhu. There are these 5 ways in which others might criticize you. Well, that's kind of stronger, isn't it? Their speech may be timely or untimely, true or false, gentle or harsh, beneficial or harmful, from a heart of love or from secret hate. When others criticize you, they may do so in any of these ways. If that happens, you should train like this. That's much more plain spoken. I like that. The Sujato version. Thank you. The Venerable Sujato version. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we will blurt out. Oh, I love this blurt out. He's really got it, doesn't he? Our minds. I'm reading from the chat. If anyone is lost, we will blurt out no bad words. We will remain full of compassion, with a heart of love, and no secret hate. We will meditate, spreading a heart of love to that person. And with them as a basis, we will meditate, spreading a heart full of love to everyone in the world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. That's how you should train. You gotta be kidding me. The person who has just aggravated you beyond belief, you're supposed to somehow generate this incredible, powerful love and then spread it to the whole world. Really? Are you going to do that? So this is some high-powered stuff. It might not be like a starting place for your practice. We might want to just learn to generate love, loving kindness at will first. But when we've got it kind of a good, nice tool in our toolbox, something that's ready at hand, something we know how to use, then we can pull it out when there's a time of stress, when someone's really getting in our face, when there's a problem. So first, to get to the kind of mastery where this is even possible, we have to start easy. Can you send love to somebody who's lovable? Because sometimes that's even hard to do. Can you send love to someone who's lovable? Someone that you just maybe don't even know personally, so they've never actually aggravated you. Someone famous, the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, somebody just out there who's awesome and hasn't personally aggravated you.
A kitten.
Yes, there is also the cat option. One time when I was teaching this very quickly and briefly to a woman who was troubled, who I had like 5 minutes with her, I asked if she likes cats, and she did. So I said, imagine you have a cat up against your chest and it's purring. Feel the love that you have for that cat. And see if you can generate that love to yourself. And that if you can generate that love for yourself, see if you can generate that love for lovable people. And if you can generate that love for the cat and yourself and lovable people, then you're going to be all right. That's what I could do with her in just a couple of minutes. I mean, she was coming off of alcohol, she was just getting sober. So, you don't want to ask too much, but give her something to work with. There are a number of methods that that are mentioned in the scripture for radiating metta. So you can just make a habit of sending out well-wishing as you just go about your day. You're walking down the sidewalk and you're just radiating it to the world. But there's also, sitting meditation, developing it very deliberately. And there's a practice that's very, very popular in the States. I believe it came out of Burma, and I think it's in the Visuddhimagga. So in modern times, it came to America through Burmese teachers who got it from the Visuddhimagga. I'm half guessing here. And that is the one where you start with yourself, then your benefactor, then your parents, family, friends, and neutral people, and then finally any enemies. And if you do that practice, there's a trick to it. The trick is that the intention was that you start with where it's easiest. But whoever came up with that version didn't know that it was going to get into the hands of people who hate themselves. Very famous conversation with the Dalai Lama and early wave of Western Theravada American teachers and psychotherapists. They had this teachers conference with the Dalai Lama around 1980 or something, 85. So some time ago, but each of those teachers have talked about it a number of times. So some of you may have heard about this one conversation they had with the Dalai Lama. And someone asked the Dalai Lama about working with people who have self-hate. And Dalai Lama turned to his translator. And they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he finally says, people hate themselves? He didn't have a word for it. He had no concept of it. It was a shock to him to hear that people hate themselves. And he said, you actually work with people who have that problem? And they said, yes, they actually work with people who have that problem. And they said, do any of you have that problem? And they admitted they'd had that problem themselves too. So we are culturally bizarre. The Americans sitting here. I can't speak to people who are not the Americans sitting here. Dallas is going, what? Satira may be also going, what? But yeah, I remember many years ago, back long before I found Buddhism. Yeah, not from America. That's right. You were spared, Dallas. I asked somebody how I could. Somebody had told me I needed self-esteem. I didn't know what that was, so I asked a friend, "How do you get self-esteem?" She said, "Well, look in the mirror and say you love yourself." So I looked in the mirror and I went, I love. No, I hate you. I just totally hate you. So there you go. But it's not like that now. So there's hope. If you're still at the "I hate you" in the mirror business, if you look at yourself on Zoom and you're like, "Ah, I hate that being," there's hope. It doesn't have to stay like that. Um, so the point of that whole exercise of doing the loving kindness, starting with yourself and then the benefactor and then the parents and all that, is to start with what's easy. So apparently in the Buddha, in the culture, in the commentarial times, when they wrote that, it was easy to love yourself in that particular culture. Not every culture has that benefit. So you start with what's easy. For some people, a purring cat is easy. For some people, their dog is easy. For some people, their younger brother is easy. Like, who's easy? Start with where it's easy to send this loving kindness, this well wishing. People often find it very helpful to choose a few phrases, such as "May I be safe, well, happy, peaceful." I couldn't even do that when I was starting it because saying "May I be safe" reminded me of danger, and then I got triggered. So I can do it now, but for a long time I'm like, safe. No, don't say that, because it made me feel endangered. So I just say, well, happy and peaceful. I just stayed with that. Go with what's easy, go with what works. Experiment. You might like some other phrases, but something like well, happy and peaceful. So you wish it to whomever is easy. And until you feel radiant, until you just have this well wishing just so coming flowing from you so easily. Then you extend it to another person of that category or to the next category. And when you're equally radiant with the first categories, go to the next category. So when you've gotten yourself so incredibly radiantly, happily sending out well wishing, then finally you can even include an enemy. A shortcut to that is simply radiating to the whole world, because then you don't get down to into the details of something that you might find objectionable. So that's another way to do it. I was going to give another shortcut. Where's the other shortcut? I forgot. What did you want to add?
Well, I wanted to talk about the phrases. And the phrases I was learning when I was starting, it was really difficult for me to direct loving kindness towards myself because I was feeling a lot of woundedness, and I was told to direct it towards my heart. So I did have to visualize a small child needing a lot of tenderness and care, but she had to cry first. But the phrases, awara means, if you say awara homi, Nepali meaning of that is, may I be free from hatred or free from hostility, because wera is hatred or hostility. So a lot of times we have inner anger. This is what this so-called hatred towards ourselves is, a non-acceptance or anger or hatred. And so if you're saying, may I be free from that, may I have freedom from hatred, may I have freedom from fear, may I be free from hostility, may I be free from anxiety. So I was saying that in those terms, instead of may I be safe and may I have love and stuff like that, may I be free from these afflicted. This is the starting point. And that actually was helpful to me. And then when we're wishing that for other people to be free from those afflictions, by the time we get to the hostile person, asking them to be free from hostility. So that was making a lot of sense to me to phrase it that way. The freedom from these afflicted emotions, freedom from hatred, freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety. And then there's this one phrase, it's, and may I maintain well-being in myself, or may I care for myself happily. And there was a famous chant where it was recorded, beautiful chanting. I don't remember. Yeah. And the English is saying, may I care for myself happily is the last part. Nice. But it is with the freedom from hostility, freedom from mental affliction, freedom from physical affliction. And then I sent that recording to my brother's family, and my niece loved that phrase, may I care for myself happily. She really related to that. But it's very healing if there's often we say Westerners, it's probably people from all cultures, but it seems like more predominant in the West for people to have low self-esteem for some various reasons. It can be one extreme or another, where there's extreme conceit or extreme low self-esteem. But that's what I wanted to share anyway. The aware is very freedom from hostility.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Something that also helped me is I've heard most of the teachers say that you're bringing up these feelings. Actually, to the metta itself is an intention. So even if it seems to fail to bring up all these positive feelings, you just keep at the intention, and it's okay. So if you just keep repeating the phrases, keep bringing up the intention, you're doing the metta, even if you don't seem to be reaping the immediate benefit of all these happy feelings. So you can just trust in the process and put your mind there again and again and again. You're training your mind to go there. If nothing else, you're creating some awesome neural pathways and enlarging them so that that's where your mind wants to go. Okay, so that is that one way of doing it. Again, it's grounded in the commentaries, I believe. I don't know anywhere in the early Buddhist text that process exactly is spelled out. But we do see in early Buddhist text is dividing like the universe into quarters. So imagining the whole universe as 4 quarters and sending this well-wishing to one quarter, another quarter, the third quarter, the fourth quarter. I found that easier to do when I imagined like an orange, like the whole universe being a big orange made of 4 slices with me right in the middle. then I could see each wedge being one of the corners of the universe. But that made it a little bit possible, but I still never really connected so much with that. So then there are also the 10 directions. New book. Okay. Then there are the 10 directions. So there's northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, northwest, north, up and down. 10. So there's 8 all around you, up and down. So I had a wonderful breakthrough because, well, let me back up. So when I was being taught the 10 directions, there was phrasing something like, may all beings be well, happy, and peaceful, and may no harm come to them, may no problems come to them, like that, something along those lines, to the northeast. And then you say it to the east. Then you say it to the southeast. I hated the entire world by the time we got to up and down. So I just couldn't bear it. But in the Metta Sutta, where the Buddha was giving instructions on loving kindness, He said, radiate kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies, downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded. And one day I went, that's the 10 directions in short form. Because if you think of, outwards and let's see, upwards to the sky, downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded. That's like the northeast, east, southeast, south, etc., all around, up and down, right? And that I could do. I could send well wishing, radiated upwards to the skies, like all the beings. I can imagine even universes way out there, and downwards, down through the earth, and to all the universes, all the galaxies. I mean, out there, and then I say universes. I meant galaxies, and then in every direction, crossing the earth, but from far, far beyond the earth, every direction, up, down, all around. And maybe with phrases or just sending well wishing. Then either way, like that I could do. And so that business of upwards to the skies, downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded from the Metta Sutta, that became kind of my short form emergency metta. The first time I consciously used that was, I was still a laywoman then, but learning about this in Buddhism. And someone cut in front of me in line at a cashier, and then and then I radiated loving kindness up, down, and all around, and it was over. Like the anger was gone. Like, wow, that worked. That was amazing.
But you didn't start with that person.
Not yet. That's a little further in there. That's a little advanced. That is a little advanced.
Yeah.
There's another form of metta. I've never really gotten into it. But some of these Vipassana retreats, like at IMS, they recite it. So you're radiating loving kindness to, that is it, all women, all men, all noble beings, all non-noble beings, all the beings in the sea, all the beings on the land, all the beings in the sky. I don't remember the whole list, but you're divvying up the beings in various ways and sending them well wishing. I start getting upset over animals in cages, and I just like I kind of lose the plot when I'm doing that one. Maybe you guys are better at this stuff. I have to be very conscientious not to put myself in a position of getting sidetracked. So this practice really actually it's incredibly powerful. And even just sending metta to yourself has effects on the mind that are far-reaching in my experience and my opinion. There was a time when I went through some really hard stuff, some really bad stuff. And I went on retreat right after that. And okay, good night, Mita. And so it was a metta retreat, and I had really gone through some really heavy stuff. And I was using the walking meditations to go face plant and cry on the pillow in my room. Like every walking meditation, I'd go to my room and cry. I'd really done through some stuff. And they said, look, you just stay with you. You just send well wishing to you. I'm like, can I go to the first category yet? No, you just stay with you. 3 weeks, I did loving kindness to myself. It was incredibly healing. It had a huge effect for me. Really put me back on my feet. I was just, it healed me up. It was just amazing. So important for me. I'm so glad those teachers shrewdly didn't let me pass on to those. It was a category teaching metta retreat. They did not let me progress in the categories. They just said, you just stay with you. You just stay with you. And the thing is, and I've used I've used this simile or metaphor many, many times in this teaching. So just bear with me. But if you made a bowl of popcorn, this enormous bowl of popcorn for you and your guest, and you butter it a certain way, or you flavor it a certain way, or you salt it a certain way, and you mix it all up, and you set it on the table, and you're eating the popcorn, so are the other people. What you are giving you, you're dishing out to the others. When you give true metta, loving kindness, even just to you, that's what you're able to dish out to the world. That's what you got on tap. That's what that's what you're literally dishing out. It works out in English slang. You have to be dishing out something. When you're dishing out really powerful metta to you, it's not a selfish, assuming you're not a narcissist, but if you're a narcissist, none of this teaching is going to help you anyway. So just, I don't worry about the narcs. I just don't worry about them. And the sociopaths, I'm not worried about you, any of you or sociopaths and narcs, because this isn't going to help you anyway. So what to do? But assuming that you're all ordinary folk, then then when you stay with yourself with a loving kindness, it has a healing effect. You are creating those neural pathways that I believe will be easily turned on to others with empathy, compassion, and loving kindness. Truly, whatever you're giving in that bowl of popcorn, you're dishing out one way or the other. And so it's not a waste of time, and it's not a selfish thing, and it's not a dead end or a useless thing. So I'm going to tell you a metta story. And some of you have heard this, and some of you have heard it a couple of times, but some of you haven't heard it at all. So those of you who've heard it multiple times, please just bear with me. Shoot, I don't know what I did with her photo, but there was this woman that I lived with. I moved into this house. This was out at my husband. I'd had cancer. My husband walked out on me. I was almost homeless, and I ended up moving into this house. And so it was a house with 3 other women. And when I interviewed with them, one of them didn't make herself available. So I had to drive again an hour to this place to interview. And I waited and waited and waited for her. And she finally came down the stairs and went, I don't have time for this, and ran out the door. And they said, look, don't worry. She's going to move out. I'm okay, great. This difficult person is going to move out. She didn't move out. She was away for a while. She was drumming in Hawaii, and she called it Hawaii, which made me hate her more. She had named herself after a goddess. So she would wear white clothing because she was a Hindu devotee to a guru who would travel around the world. And so there she is in her white clothing being mean to me. And and she was about almost 6 foot tall. Her waist was about that big around. And she had the big poofy blonde hair that I always wanted my entire life. And when I had cancer, somebody had told me that their hair had come in blonde and curly. So I was really counting on that. And when my hair came in, it came in dark. I'd been blonde. It's sort of blonde. It came in darker and wasn't curly. It was just sort of nappy. Just like limp. Not great. So anyway, she had the hair, she had the waist, she had the height, she had big blue eyes, and she had an attitude. There were 3 shelves in the bathroom and a bunch of shelves way down the hall. She and I shared the upper floor of this big house. And I'm like, goddess. There are 3 shelves and they're covered in your stuff. She's like, yeah, you can use your shelf down the hall. She did. I had a cat that was very obnoxious, that would make a lot of crying noises. And she rallied the roommates that I had to get rid of my cat. And so I actually had to get rid of my cat. And so this was something that did not endear her to me. And so it went. And when she was out of town drumming with the drummers from Hawaii, then that was fine. But when she was back in the house, when she was in the house, it was unbearable. And at that time, I was keeping 8 precepts at home, and I would make this large lunch, And I think I was eating maybe even one meal a day at that time. I don't remember for sure, but I would have a big lunch because that's all the calories for the rest of the day until dawn of the next day, and eating before noon. And so I'd sit there and it would be my meditation. Well, she would come down the stairs yakety yakking on the first mobile phone I'd ever seen. She wasn't working. She had a lot of money from somewhere and I never knew where. But she would come down the hall, yakety yakety yak, in a Yankee accent. I'm from the South. Anyway, she'd come down yakety yakking in a Yankee accent, and sit there. And there's one huge room, that downstairs, huge room, a dining area, sitting area, a kitchen. And I'm over there having my meditation meal, and she goes on the first mobile phone I'd ever seen. And it got to where when I heard her footstep on the stairs, my stomach would go in knots of hatred. I couldn't bear it. I hated her so much. She had a friend visit her, an old friend. And at one point, the woman came up to me and goes, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong with this goddess. I don't know what's wrong with her. I've never seen her act like this," regarding how she was treating me. And I said, "All I've seen of her." I mean, it was just that shocking the way she was treating me. And so this went on, and I had just gotten over a catastrophic cancer. I had been half dead for a while. And for me to harbor hate, I did not have the physical stamina for it. And I became concerned that I was actually going to cause myself to, get like pneumonia or something. I already had pneumonia a couple of times, like after cancer. Like I was very, very fragile. I did not have the physical stamina to hold that much hate. It was going to kill me. And people said, to send her well wishing. So, I did the best I could. May the such and such, I'll spare you the word, be well, happy, and peaceful. May the such and such, no, I wasn't saying her name. May the such and such not die a horrible death. I mean, I was trying. I was really trying. But the thing is, it got desperate. This really was becoming life and death for me, truly, literally. I had to get over that hate. And yet my stomach would just go as soon as I heard her footstep on those stairs. It was desperate. I was desperate. And I started really trying to mean it. May she be well, happy, and peaceful. May she get all good things. May all the good things that I want in life, may she have. May even this good stuff that I shouldn't want to have. Like, may people praise her. May everyone love her. Like, may all good stuff come to her. I started getting desperate. One day I got desperate enough that I wished that she get enlightened before me. Now, this is a Hindu girl. American Hindu. Like, this is even like overcoming any kind of elbowing of religious like superiority. Like, may she get enlightened before I do. I meant it. I said it with all my heart, and I really meant it. And I'm radiating loving kindness to her. May she be well, happy, peaceful, and all good to come to her. May she have success. May she have wealth. May she have beauty. May she have all good things. May she have a beautiful rebirth, but have a long, long life. May she have good health. May she have everything that she needs, and may she attain full enlightenment before I attain anything. May she attain enlightenment. I really meant, like, may she be at least a step ahead of me. Really meant it. Within, I can't remember the exact number, if it was 24 or 48 hours, in a very short time, she came up to me. She says, "Hey, I found out something." She told me that that her soulmate had been in a motorcycle accident and had been in intensive care for weeks. And it had happened around the time I'd moved in. She thought that all these she was very connected with him. She was feeling his physical devastation in her own body, and she thought it was me. And that's why she was hating on me, because she thought I had brought her terrible feelings. But she had learned this had happened to him. She'd identified correctly the cause of it. And so now she had no more problem with me. And yeah, great. She was just so happy about it. I said, "You want me to be happy? You've been pushing me out of this house since I got here." She said, "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry." Just like that. Just like that, this miracle happened. She invited me to go for a walk with her. We lived right alongside a state park. And so I walked with her and we talked out a lot of things. And I started to see a lot of good in her. One night I dreamed of her guru. Her guru was that hugging guru, Amachi. And she goes, "Oh, no, 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 no one dreams about Amachi unless she's calling you to come meet her." I was actually dreaming about like being in line to see her, and there was some white elephant in the dream. Anyway, so she said, "Come meet my guru." So I went and I met Amachi, and it was a goosebumpy experience. Like it was really amazing. I don't think the woman, I don't know if she's enlightened by Buddhist standards, but I don't think she's a human being. I think she's part goddess. Like there's something different about that woman. And to say I had a nice time would be an understatement. It was very beautiful. I still see enlightenment as something different than what she is offering, but it was truly awesome. I was really happy to meet her guru. And we just really bonded. And not long after that, she told me she was going to move out, and I burst into tears. Didn't want her to go. This is the power of metta. I talked about this with some regulars here at Charlotte Buddhist Vihara, the Vihara that supports me, and where we're sitting here. And one of them, she used to be a board member. She's just stepped off the board because of her health. But anyway, she had a relative, an in-law, that she absolutely could not bear. Just an impossible woman, an impossible person. And she started doing the metta thing. The healing came slowly, but by the end of that woman's life, a few years later, this friend of mine, the supporter of mine, was able to be there at her side. And they had been absolutely filled with hate for each other before. I'm sorry, this is her mother-in-law I'm speaking of. Or not her, no, I'm sorry, not her mother-in-law. I got it all wrong. I'm talking about her stepmother. So her father's wife that he'd married in middle age. Like this woman had been so just unpleasant to my supporter, and they'd never been able to get on. But she was able to support her. She was able to be there for her. She was able to be with her there at her passing. This all happened because of her turning her mind to love, to loving kindness, diligently, really again and again, with a bit of desperation. You know, she did not want to harbor that hate that she'd been harboring for years. And it's not that this woman really ever stopped being difficult, but the relationship stopped being impossible. And she could find the good in that woman. And the woman seemed to be able to find the good in her as well, finally. And healing happened. Healing happened in my own family. You know, we'll never be people that we would have chosen, my siblings and I, but we cooperate. We get on with each other. And we can joke around. We can get on with each other, get along with each other, which was not always the case. So, and that also I attribute to the impact of Buddhism and metta practice. Do you have a metta story you'd like to share?
Oh, a metta story. I don't know if it's great, so dramatic. But what I noticed is that maybe I didn't particularly hate people, but I had a lot of anger. And I sometimes would have, as a layperson, somebody would be kind of a pet peeve that I would have. And I think for me, what happens is a change of heart to understanding the other person. And there was this one, where I was a nurse, and I was doing in-home care, and I was caring for disabled adults and children. And I had this one patient that was in an adult activity program. So there was disabled adults and some ratio of caregivers. And this one was like 2 to 1, and I was 1-on-1 because mine was severely disabled. And this one woman, the way she was speaking to her two patients, it was just unbearable to me. I didn't like the way she was. There was like a lot of different things I didn't like about this person, and I kept like feeling this. I don't know if it was hatred, but more like anger towards the person.
Outrage.
So anyway, so I just was working with, because I didn't want to have hatred in my heart towards anybody. I was looking at the anger aspect of it and trying to overcome the anger. And then she ended up getting fired, or she was fired. Her husband left her. She had lost her work, all just like in a very short period of time. And my heart went so just turned from anger and irritation at this person. It just totally went to compassion towards her. And so it was very dramatic to see that part of why she was speaking to the patients that way is because she's very untrained. And because of her lack of intelligence, her lack of training, her lack of social skills, everything just kind of fell apart all at once for her. And so that really was a teaching in compassion, actually, because I just felt just this heart of compassion, and then it was genuine well-wishing for her, wishing for her well-being, and more understanding of how she was behaving the way she was behaving. So that's one thing that just came up when you were talking. So it's a change of heart when we do the metta. And I was working with also seeing how destructive anger was to myself and trying to undo the anger, trying to see how it was such a strong habit pattern. It wasn't helping me. It wasn't helping anybody. And so this is why that aware, I keep thinking of, may I be free from hatred, may I be free from anger. And can you imagine being totally free from these afflictive emotions, them not arising? So I think this is one of the aspects of metta, is that liberation of mind through loving kindness is being free from anger and hatred. So that's what my story is for now.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have a metta story where loving kindness turned things around? I've got a simple one, then I'll share while you're sitting there thinking. Ayya Suvijjana's story reminded me of an occasion. A woman, I'll call Sally, came to me and said that she was in training to do volunteer hospice work, and that she was very upset with the nurse who was kind of overseeing her, because she could see that the nurse was sort of neglecting a number of patients, and it was grating on her, and she was about to quit the whole thing. But she asked my advice first, that the nurse was snappish with her and they weren't getting along. She was sort of making judgmental kind of indications of judgments towards the nurse, which didn't go over well. And so she asked my advice, and I said, give her a gift. She said, what? I said, give the nurse a gift. So she thought about it, and she bought an angel pen. So the angel pens are like a symbol of the hospice situation, the hospice thing. And she was a wealthy woman, so she bought a really nice pen to give the nurse. And so she gave the nurse the pen. The nurse was surprised, of course, because they had been knocking heads and disliking each other, not getting on to where you would give a gift. She was really touched, and she said, I want to show you my favorite patient. So she called Sally in to a certain room, and there was a child on hospice. All the other patients were adults. This was a child, and that's why she was neglecting the other patients, because she was so racked with emotion in doing the nursing care for this child. Then Sally understood what was really going on with this nurse, that it was the particular situation, a very unusual situation for that nurse, that she had a child, among her patients. And that's why the others weren't getting 100%. And then Sally, on fully understanding her, had no more ill will towards her, and they became very, very close. And she continued her hospice training. But all that's what it took to turn it around. Just giving that gift, that little gesture of kindness, made all the difference. Who has a metta story?
I can also just briefly say something. I did have somebody in my monastic life that I was very kind of hostile towards me. And so I did work with the loving kindness. And not only we were email, because we were in different locations, we'd have to communicate. We just functionally had to communicate with one another. And I was always putting like very words of loving, may you be well, and asking her about her well-being and such like. But I was also working with loving kindness, the metta bhavana, in her direction. And so it did change our relationship. So I've seen that again and again happen when there's some kind of tension between people, to just really be radiating that particular person with loving kindness and then expressing it somehow or another. Like the pin, that's a beautiful story, but just the words of kindness too, or just asking, I hope you're well, things like that. So yeah, so that might spark somebody's memory of some incident like that, similar.
Thank you. One thing that happens when you do that, when you're seeing this underlying good in people, when you're looking for the good in people, even if they have a whole lot of bad and you just sort of like, well, the bad is boring, but look at all this good, they feel grateful. They feel like, oh, someone finally truly sees me. And then it brings out the good in them. Like if you take a big magnet and you put it over little tiny chips of little bits of metal, little metal shavings, they stand up. They stand up when you put a magnet over metal shavings. The good in them stands out. Or if what you're seeing are their obstructions, that's what stands out. It's what stands up. You want to see the negative in somebody, just say some little snarky comment to them and boom, you'll get that negative. But if you persistently keep digging and finding the good, then the good starts to stand up in them. They feel like, wow, this person really sees that, really sees me. They feel like that. If there's any hope for them at all. All right, so we'll call it a morning for some of you, call it a night for the rest of us. All right.
May you all be well, happy, and peaceful.